All right. Hi, everyone. Ashmita Chatterjee. I am an analytics liaison, a partner to my clients that helps evaluate and shape marketing activities and make them accountable towards business outcomes. I have had the privilege of having a few roles at Rise over the last decade plus, and hopefully that helps give me a 360-degree view in my recommendations that are solution oriented and also executionable, if that's a word. And then, oh, I should have moved to my bio slide. Excuse me. If the clicker works. Anyways, I'll still complete about me. I was hearing everybody talk about their interests from scuba diving to hiking. My idea of my personal time is a margarita and staying on the beach. So I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. Very excited to be here and share some of the tests and strategies that we have recently done within the world of measurement. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Josh.
Hi, and I'm Josh Tan. I've been with the agency for quite a while now. Google was my foray into digital marketing, so I'm always excited to be at a Google office, but really only because of all the free food and the snack selection that puts Whole Foods to shame. My role at the agency is to solve marketing challenges with media strategies that are custom to every advertiser and recommend measurement solutions that allow marketers to have full visibility into how their campaigns are yielding business results. And as you heard earlier, all media needs to be accountable for business outcomes. Equally daunting is that measuring brand is a lot more complex than measuring performance.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I know we heard that before as well. Can you double click on that for the audience? What do you mean by measuring brand is more complex than measuring performance? And
Sure.
how do we go about it?
Yeah, well, you have the clicker, so you double click. Um, so we've actually had a lot of experience with this. Clients across industries, financial services, telecom subscriptions, health services. In this particular case, it was for one of our hospitality clients. They were enjoying paid search. A large part of their marketing dollars were going to paid search, and they were getting a lot of benefit out of that. But there comes a time when you hit the point of diminishing returns where every ad dollar spent no longer yields dollars back. And so we went to them saying, here's a great plan for you to reach more customers. We recommended YouTube, talked about how they can accelerate their social campaigns, and then eventually launch display. And what you see on the screen is how that activation rolled out. So we did it one at a time. The lines on the chart here represent the ad impressions generated from all of those different tactics. And you can see that there's a substantial increase in reach across all of their tactics. But after a few months, they came back to us saying, well, I'm not seeing conversions come through on my YouTube campaign, so I want to pause this investment. I don't see the value. I don't want to do it anymore. We looked at the data, and what was pretty clear to us is that there was a notable increase. There was a significant increase in their total conversions. And this couldn't be explained by seasonality or just seasonality, just year-over-year comps. There was something else going on. So I took a step back and said, we needed a better way of explaining what is happening. We needed a way to understand how customers are reacting with the ads that they're being served. And so to answer that question, we conducted a correlation analysis. And what this allowed us to do is a couple things. So first, we wanted to understand where all these conversions are coming from and understand which tactic was contributing to that. So the first bullet that you have on the screen that came out of this analysis is that a lot of people who were seeing YouTube ads were also converted. But the missing piece there was that they weren't converting on YouTube. So we weren't seeing those conversions coming from YouTube. The second thing that we learned from this analysis is that a lot of people who were seeing YouTube ads were also seeing search ads. So it was clear to us that the path for them to convert, the relationship between different ads, was really not as simple as we wanted it to be. But this helped us understand which combinations of tactics we should be launching and investing more in to drive further conversion volume. So we went back to the client and showed them this graph. And this is just an illustration of all the ad impressions served. It's color-coded by the different tactics that went live. You can see the bottom row there in dark blue. That's search. And there are modest fluctuations in search. But the real volume is coming from all the other tactics that we previously launched. And the orange line represents the increase in conversion volume alongside the campaign launches for the new tactics.
Yeah, pretty cool. And the more I look at this chart, a couple of things come to mind. One is that we were, of course, able to change the conversation from an expense conversation to an investment. When the marketing team and the CMO goes up to the CFO and says, hey, if you take away my YouTube budget or my media budget, it's going to impact and, a negative impact on about 100,000 impressions. That's a very different conversation when you go back to them and say, if you take away my media budget, it's going to impact about 10,000 leads, right? Like right there is a shift in how we're having that conversation. And I think the second thing it, of course, sort of brings out, and this is getting a bit academic for a second here, but media is inherently nonlinear, right? So let's just all of us take a giant step back and remember that, again, things like ad stock, which is a cumulative effect, things like lag, diminishing returns, as Josh mentioned, every media at some point is going to have that S diagram on the left, right? And these response phases are something that we do need to take into account when we are measuring the impact of media and the incrementality of media. So just something that I wanted for us to keep in mind, that while there are things that we can look in and we can control, there are also things that we need to remember are having. This is just the physics of media, as we'll call it, or the fundamental principles of having, an impact of media. It is not linear. It is inherently non-linear. So with all of these, examples about how do we really drive value to our clients, how do we demonstrate the ROI, at Rise, we've come up with this analytics spectrum. You can call it a menu. And I know it definitely reads left to right, but I want to say here that at no point are we saying that as you move towards the right, you start abandoning what you're doing on the left, right? So the first piece is, of course, real-time optimizations. We heard that from Keisha and Dan, that you don't want to be blinded. You want to be looking at performance metrics, whatever signals are still available, to shape your campaigns and optimize them from both an effective and an efficiency standpoint. We, of course, at Rise have come up with our proprietary tool Connex, and we'll talk a little more about that. Josh here just talked about correlation and how that, sort of is important to look at before you dismiss off a channel or before you make, just overall decisions. Let's talk about lift and control. Again, as the name suggests, it is about measuring incremental lift. It is essentially an experiment. It is about doing really timely analysis. In fact, we just had our first round of review for a financial tech client. I just got off the phone with them yesterday, where, again, this client had never ventured into programmatic. This client really wanted to leverage upper funnel to sort of bring out the awareness, the consideration, and grow the remarketing pools and really get their word out, their brand out. But at the same time, the CMO ultimately is accountable to growing the CAC, the cost of acquisition of the customer. So we designed a geo lift test for them, where we clustered all their DMAs, all their markets where they have a presence, and we sort of took out few markets from each of the like clustered markets. So that's the holdout. And we were able to compare the impact through CAC on programmatic. So for the test markets that had programmatic, was there a lift in their business outcome? And that proved to be something that, again, the conversation going back to the CFO and to the board to say, okay, even upper funnel has an impact on your business outcome beyond just driving more impressions.
And as you're referring to, you were just describing our practice of conducting lift and control tests off platform, but we also partner with Google and others to do on-platform lift and control studies, or brand lift studies, I should say. We concluded not too long ago one for one of our home services clients, where we saw search volume double because of YouTube activation.
Yeah, and again, on platform or off platform, It's a great tool. It's a timely tool. It's a great one to measure efficacy of a single channel or when you do not have a lot of historical data, but it is having more of a micro view. The ones on the right, and we love abbreviations, so that's TMEM, Tactical Media Effectiveness Model. Again, I think you heard a little bit of that during the Gelmar case study conversation. So we'll talk about them again, just overall bringing the culture and the measure of incrementality to your entire media mix model. But again, like we said, that doesn't take away from what real-time optimizations and real-time learnings do.
So glad you're taking us there. So it's so crucially important that we're optimizing against transparent data that is available in real time. And that's why we have Connex that brings in all of your media data into one platform so we can be optimizing off of data that has not gone stale. But in addition to that, it's also important that we are optimizing toward the right KPIs. And so if we just think about video for a second, having a cost per conversion view for that tactic may not really tell us the full picture. It doesn't really give me the answers that I need in order to move that strategy forward. I would want to look instead at reach metrics, ad engagement, completion rates, to really understand if we're reaching the right audience and if that audience is being served content that is relevant to them. Which is why Connex also looks at, it gives us the insight at how different ads or different creatives are performing. So this is just one quick view that enables us to look at all the creatives in flight as we're creating more and more at scale, implementing more. We really need the data to be able to say that one is working versus the other. And we can, George walked us through how we can create all of this, but at the end of the day, it needs to be served up to the right audience, and that audience needs to resonate with the creative. So Connex also gives us that view. One thing that we also talk about, and we always call it Connex alerts, but this I really think about is intelligence. So Connex having all the data across all your media allows us to do a few things. And we do that through our alerts functionality, which is a lot more than just receiving a notification on your phone. What it allows us to do is really monitor, keep track, and capitalize on opportunities across three different categories. First is profit and scale. As we like to call it. These are just areas within your campaigns that can absorb more budget, they can grow a little bit more, but we need to know when the right time is for us to take advantage of that. Second is new opportunities, and that's really about looking at the new ways that people are searching. It's changing year over year, looking at the different products that are available. Google's always releasing more and more products, or changing the ways that these products are operating. And as we're using more of that, we need the data and the signals to be able to understand how that is impacting our strategies. And the final thing is, campaign management might seem a little mundane or ordinary, but it's really about opening our bandwidth to do a lot more higher value tasks so that we can think about the strategy, not just in terms of the most tactical level, but also are we reaching the individuals that we do need to reach?
Thanks. That sounds pretty cool that we were able to bucket them. And also because, of course, I've never seen these slides before. Can you walk us through an example for each of them, Josh?
Sure can. So when these alerts functionality rolled out, there were three stories that circulated, and we like to share till today. One was our omnichannel retailer. So budgets are always strict, but sometimes they're a lot more rigid than other times. And during this period, there were fixed budgets for certain campaigns, and we set up alerts to give us compelling reasons for us to go back to the client and say, you should be investing more in this set of campaigns. And because of that, we're able to just over 1 weekend grow their incremental revenue by over 2.5 times. Another client, which Ash, you and I worked on this, not together, but we work on the client. No, we don't work together. One of our CPG food brands. This was a new brand they were launching. It was from the beginning, so they had a really deep strategy of all the audiences and customers that they wanted to reach, but they also wanted to reach them at very specific need states. So you can imagine the number of segments that were created. Because it's new, we needed to know a few things. First is, are the audience that we're reaching actually getting volume? Are these the right ones? Two is, are the people that we are reaching engaging with our ads? Is there sufficient click volume for us to continue? And that is kind of the opposite. Are we entering as a new brand a market that, or a segment that is way too competitive and we need to scale back a little bit? And because of these combinations of alerts, the intelligence that we got from that, we were able to improve our reach from before using it to after using it by 3 times. But not only did the reach improve, it's the quality of people that we were reaching was a lot more relevant to their brand. And so we were able to improve ad engagement about 5-fold. And the last example that we'd like to share is a lot of clients have multi-location type format, and some are a bunch of stores, some is different service areas. You can imagine that managing budgets across all these different markets, that is in itself a full-time job. And what we were really afraid of is anytime a budget flight was not spending the full amount, that is opportunity that we are not capitalizing on. So we needed to know when something was really really far behind, rather. And because of this functionality, we were able to improve the way that we spend budgets. So we spend a lot more efficiently. That's about by 52%. But the more important metric there is that because we capitalize on more opportunity, our sales grew by about 76%.
Pretty cool. And again, I think we just highlight here that there is so much we can do intra-channel and intra-tactic. But of course, let's just now, go the other way and talk about media mix model. It's having its moment. It's a renaissance, almost like vintage sneakers or, I don't know, country music. It's back. And I want to get in a little bit into media mix modeling. I know there is some censor out there about who wants to use data that's like 2 years old, and we'll talk about that. But I think this time MMM is back with a vengeance, right? It is being aided by advanced analytics modeling. We're, of course, collaborating with Google and getting into access into beta and, really looking at Meridian. I think, again, just to take a step back, media mix modeling is a statistical procedure that you do leveraging historical data up to 24 to 36 months to really show the impact of your marketing activities on your sales and business goals. And I say renaissance because it was something that we did back in the day, and then digital came and we started looking at attribution and last touch. And again, I think with the signals that we have, that still has a place. But with privacy headwinds, with just increased pressure on the marketing teams to show the impact of investments, we do need to now take a step back and start figuring out how do we work with our clients to really show the impact on sales. So what do you get out of a media mix modeling? The first step is, of course, the decomposition of sales. Now, if you have an offering, you have hopefully come up with that offering because there is a need for that in the market. So without any media support, and it is controversial in the room of marketers, but let's be honest, without any marketing or media investment, your brand will still make some sales. There is inherent consumer demand. There are things like brand equity that, go in. There's sometimes just accessibility, right? The store is close to me. I need to pick up milk. I'm going to go in and there. Not a lot of marketing went into it for me to create that demand, right? So sales does happen without marketing, but really the goal here is to understand how much of the incremental sales are we getting from marketing. So that's the first. And again, what we get as an output are media response curves by channel. So has TV sort of optimized its, play in the role? What about paid search? Like, have we maximized? Again, go back to that saturation curve. These saturation curves then lead us to really sort of understand what's the optimal media allocation by channel. Again, remember, this is now moving away from last click and what we are getting out of, our engines to really look at sales. Is, print driving 66% of the sales? Is, out of home driving certain amount of sales? How do we really come up with that? And then, of course, what's great is that we do get a weekly sales forecast that as marketers, we can hold ourselves accountable against. So these are sort of the three views that you get out of a analysis. Yes, it is a lot of work. You take about 3 to 6 months just to prep the data. But again, I think where we are headed towards, again, with just the advent of technology, this is getting a lot more accessible. And honestly, I'm not Nostradamus, but I will put my bets that MMM is here to stay.
So Ash, that was very smart. What success have we seen with some of our clients?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So again, we have a specialty retail client. they came to us with the classic, is my marketing working? My CFO is after me. What do I do? And again, we are talking about, like Josh mentioned, 100 store locations, e-commerce in certain states. So we delved into MMM, again, a huge undertaking. They worked with us. They were patient. They knew that in order to get the right answers, we need to wait it out. A couple of things, that came out, which I think were important. As I said, we created a saturation curve for each of the channels, and we did realize that there were a couple of channels that had hit their saturation curve. And this is what you learn when you look at historical data. You can gain learnings for your future strategy, right? So while we manage all of their media, we were transparent and we came to them and said, look, print is not doing as well as you thought it is. And it is time for you to probably reallocate some of that budget to the channels that is working. That led to, of course, overall increase in incremental revenue. And I think that is the big part. It's like, how do you move the levers within the tactics to really get the most out of the channel? And then, of course, it also led to an increase in media attributed revenue. We were already able to establish that 45% of the sales for this retailer comes out of media. We were then able to increase it by 25%.
So I feel like we just swung from we need to optimize in real time all the way to we need to wait a couple years for this
Yep.
analysis. How can we take advantage of both analysis on a more frequent basis?
Yeah, smart question, and a lot that
Thank you.
something that we have asked ourselves before, and that is where really the tactical media effectiveness model comes in. So we do think that we were able to crack the code and get the best of two worlds. This again allows us to look at our performance tied to sales at a monthly level. We bring it down to the tactic level, but we are still using statistical rigor. We are still using regression modeling to get those answers. So I think, again, it uses the real time, it gets granular, which we know we love at Rise, and I know our clients are interested to see how a creative piece and how a tactic is performing. But then we are also able to say, okay, can we reallocate some budgets from lower performing to higher tactics? So again, you're looking at a tactic level view tied to ROAS, and you're able to make changes at a much shorter term as compared to an MMM, which is definitely an exercise in patience.
Wonderful. Well, that's all from us. Hopefully you're not tired of him yet. Our mascot for the day, Dan Ripes, is coming up again to share his experience with TMM with one of our clients, Meyer.
With the cool shoes.